Have you ever felt the earth shift quietly beneath your feet, a hidden tremor no one else seems to sense? That's how I feel watching Ethereum try to find its footing after a so-called breakthrough, the Fusaka upgrade. Everyone said it would change everything. I wanted to believe. Maybe you did too. If you're part of the crypto universe, you know how every hope can flip, suddenly, into doubt. Today, I'm laying bare the story behind Ethereum's recent transformation, a story of triumph, pain, and a future uncertain. By the end, you might not see things the way you did before. Before we dive deep, pause for a second and subscribe to Crypto 101 Central. If you crave stories that go beyond charts and tickers, you'll want to be here with us. And don't forget to ring that bell so you never miss updates that hit hard and hit home. Let me drag you back for a moment to those heated days when Ethereum was gasping for air. The whole world was lost in the Bitcoin sun, while altcoins, desperate and clamoring, fell silent. Ethereum, the quiet titan, barely brushed past its old all-time peak, a shadow of what we had all dreamed it could become. Those of us holding ETH, sometimes just the hope of ETH, felt our hearts weighed down with disappointment that pulsed behind every transaction fee and gas panic. This isn't just market talk. It's personal. Every time I checked my portfolio, every time the news said, "Hold on," I wondered how deep Ethereum could fall and if, just beyond the smoke and mirrors, the bones could survive. Then the whispers started, not just among traders and friends in midnight Discord chats, but from the corridors of power. A research company called Culpa Research announced they were turning bearish, shorting not just ETH, but the beating heart of Ethereum itself. Bitmine, does knowing the truth scare me? Sometimes. But it's worse to stay in the dark. That's what this report was for, an explosion in plain sight, called Ethereum ETHUSD, what Vitalik knows and Tom Lee doesn't. It read like a confession, mixed with a funeral dirge. And reading it, I felt exposed. Like my own hands were on the wheel, watching the road up ahead twist in ways I hadn't planned. Culpa's report didn't start with doom, though. They laid out the facts. Today, Ethereum stands as the bedrock for stable coins and real-world asset tokenization, two pillars holding up the fantasy of mass adoption. But Ethereum is slow, they said. Expensive. Stuck in a race with younger, sleeker competitors like Solana. When Fusaka arrived in December a year ago, it doubled the network's gas limit to 60 million units, in a desperate leap for scalability. People called it a triumph. Even Vitalik himself boasted of solving Ethereum's greatest puzzle, reaching decentralization, scalability, and security all at once. I wanted to believe. A bold prediction from Tom Lee, Bitmine's chairman and Ethereum's most faithful cheerleader, echoed everywhere. By now, ETH was supposed to be towering at $9,000, maybe even $15,000. But reality never asked Tom Lee for permission. The so-called surge in Ethereum activity, the wild jump in transactions, everyone pointed and celebrated. But Culpa's authors, fiddling through the mess with a surgeon's touch, saw something else. Their eyes turned not to the hopeful, but to the architects at the center. To Vitalik Buterin himself, who, not long ago, quietly sold a mountain of his own ETH. Over 16,000 ETH in one breath, then 19,000 more in the next, like nerves made visible. They tried to see it their way. Vitalik, with every motion, signaling fear, or maybe just survival. He called for austerity, a tightening of the belt to fund development and safeguard Ethereum's legacy, even as the bear market crushed every hopeful whisper. Maybe it was courage, maybe it was prophecy, but to Culpa, this wasn't bullish. It was a siren, a red flag announcing that something deep inside ETH's economic DNA had snapped. This is where fear lodges in your throat. You see, Fusaka did more than open the floodgates to higher activity. It made life easier not just for believers in Ethereum, but for those who prey on the careless and the trusting. Address poisoning, dust attacks, words that sound distant, but are anything but. Attackers began flooding the network with tiny, deceptive transactions, dust, they call it, hoping to trick you, to trick me, into sending money to a fraudulent address that looked almost right. I sometimes wonder if I check those wallet addresses too obsessively. Now I know why. Since Fusaka, dust attacks have become a silent epidemic. Once, there were maybe 17 million poison transactions on Ethereum, a number that felt manageable against the tide of legitimate trade. Now, tens of millions. In January, just after Fusaka, poison transactions spiked into the many millions. By February, even higher, and still rising. Numbers have a weight when you know what they mean. The growth in active wallets post-Fusaka appears heavily tied to malicious activity. A growing share of transactions now carries signs of poisoning attacks. Not all of us will get hit, but enough do. Enough to matter. Culpa's report continues with another twist. Fusaka was meant to gently lower fees by perhaps a fifth. Instead, they collapsed dramatically. Costs to send tokens plummeted, and what should have been a miracle became a breeding ground for scammers. The reason was simple but overlooked. An old formula, never updated for the present, failed to account for Ethereum's new landscape, Layer 2 solutions, rollups, and a growing ecosystem sharing the workload. Within minutes of creating fresh Ethereum wallets, Culpa's team reported being targeted by waves of poison transactions. Over time, tens of millions of dollars have been siphoned away through these attacks, and some estimates now place the total losses in the hundreds of millions. It's easy to feel powerless. But it's not just about the risk of losing a slice of your coins. It cuts deeper. Fusaka may have broken the very mechanism that kept Ethereum's economy alive. The fee burn. With transactions so cheap, the burn falters, staking yields drop, and validators, the ones who stake ETH and secure the system, earn less. Fewer rewards mean less security. Institutions, the heavyweight adopters of Ether, can't look past a flaw like that for long. If security falters, everything else comes tumbling down. Halfway through this, it's worth hitting pause, smash that like button and tell me. Where do your feelings fall? Is Ethereum on the brink, or is this just growing pain? Drop a comment below. It matters, now more than ever, to hear what all of us think. As the Culpa report drew out its conclusion, the warnings mounted. Inflation eating quietly at the edges of ETH's value. The chains that were once rivals, notably Solana, now feasting on Ethereum's fading momentum. Even Ethereum's own Layer 2 projects nibbling away, cannibalizing what used to be one seamless vision. Some say it's temporary, some argue it's just another winter, and spring will come. Yet the facts remain. Staking yields are dropping, and outside of Bitmine and a handful of treasury giants, demand appears weaker than expected. So, where does this leave us? On the horizon, there's talk of another upgrade, Glamsterdam, the next stretch in Ethereum's journey. It promises more scalability, a gas limit pushed even higher, potentially toward 200 million units. But in the shadow of Fusaka's unintended consequences, what will that mean? Cheaper fees, yes, maybe even more utility, but also a wider gate for attackers if protections aren't strengthened. Yet even as this story twists and falters, there are threads of hope sewn through Ethereum's history. It remains, for now, crypto's beating heart. The majority of decentralized finance, stable coins, and tokenized assets still cling to its bones. Institutions, for all their caution, still trust it more than the competition. More than half of all real-world assets live on Ethereum today. So perhaps this is just one more valley on the way to a new dawn. Bear markets always feel endless, but look closely and you'll see the builders at work. Maybe the answers, new protections, new systems, are taking root even now. Still, the poisoning problem is real. If Ethereum can't solve it, the world may move on. Yet if it does, if these scars become lessons, Ethereum could emerge stronger. One simple reminder remains. Always verify wallet addresses. Every character matters. And now I want to hear from you. Where do you stand in all this uncertainty? Are you stacking ETH or stepping back to watch how things unfold? Share your thoughts below. If you want to keep exploring these stories, don't miss the other videos on the channel. Hit the bell so you never miss the next chapter in crypto's unfolding story. Stay safe out there.